Welcome to Furniture Industry News. Today is Wednesday, July 15th, 2026, and thanks for spending a few minutes with us. A lot of this week's news circles back to one big question for our industry. Where is consumer demand actually heading? Washington just passed a major housing law. We have fresh numbers on home sales, and back-to-campus spending is about to set a record. At the same time, mattress volumes keep sliding, and outdoor furniture makers say regulation is now the thing keeping them up at night. Let's get into it. We'll start in Washington because it's the story with the longest reach. Over the weekend, Congress passed the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, and it became law. The whole focus of this bill is affordability. In fact, the words affordability and affordable show up well over 100 times across a bill that runs more than 300 pages. The law defines affordable housing as a monthly payment that's no more than 30% of a household's income. And here's a piece that could really matter for the market. There's an entire section aimed at big institutional investors. With some exceptions, it stops large investors who control 350 or more single-family homes from buying even more single-family homes. Certain build-to-rent and renovate-to-rent properties are exempt, but even those have to be sold to individual buyers within 7 years. The National Association of Home Builders called it a bipartisan housing victory, and the National Association of Realtors said the law bundles together nearly 50 negotiated measures. So why does this matter to furniture people? Because new and existing home sales drive furniture sales more than almost anything else. When someone buys a home, they furnish it. This law is aimed squarely at freeing up homes for everyday buyers instead of large landlords, which over time could mean more households in the market for furniture. The catch is timing. Putting a law like this into practice can take years, and the real payoff depends on the job market, building costs, and interest rates all cooperating. So treat this as a good long-term signal, not a reason to expect a rush of demand next quarter. And the old rule still holds. Furniture has to stay competitively priced for new homeowners to afford what they need.
That brings us to the latest read on home sales, which points in a hopeful direction. In June, existing home sales rose 2.8% compared to a year ago, reaching a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 4.09 million. They did slip about 2% from May, but the year-over-year gain is the encouraging part. A big reason is mortgage rates. The 30-year fixed rate averaged 6.49%, down from 6.82% a year earlier. Single-family sales rose 3.3%, with a median price of about $446,000. Now here's the number I'd really pay attention to. First-time buyers made up a third of all sales, up from 30% a year ago. First-time buyers are the biggest furniture opportunity in the whole market because they're often furnishing a home close to scratch. The chief economist at the National Association of Realtors, Lawrence Yun, made an interesting point. He said affordability is actually better than it was a year ago because wages are growing faster than home prices. But he also warned that if inventory stays thin, prices could climb again. So the takeaway for retailers is steady optimism. The fundamentals are improving, but the recovery is sensitive to rates, and it looks different from region to region. Let's shift to a category with real near-term opportunity: back-to-campus shopping. This year, total back-to-campus spending is expected to break $100 billion for the first time ever. The forecast from the National Retail Federation and Prosper Insights and Analytics calls for about $103.5 billion, up more than 16% from last year. The part that matters most to us is dorm and apartment furnishings, and that segment is expected to ring up around $14 billion, up from about $12.8 billion a year ago. Here's the interesting wrinkle. The average amount families plan to spend on furnishings is barely moving, sitting right around $194 per shopper. So the growth isn't coming from bigger tickets, it's coming from more people buying. 67% of shoppers plan to buy dorm or apartment furnishings this year, up from 65% last year. The story is participation, not price, and that means foot traffic and volume are where the opportunity lives.
And there's a genuine surprise in this data. Online shopping for back-to-campus is expected to drop to its lowest level since 2016, with only 41% of shoppers planning to buy online. More people are heading back into physical stores. That's a real opening. If you merchandise smart, affordable, dorm-ready pieces right now, you can grab a piece of a category that too often just defaults to the big mass merchants. Now let's talk about mattresses, where the picture is more challenging but still has a clear strategy inside it. The International Sleep Products Association released its 2026 Mattress Industry Trends Report, and it confirms what a lot of you have been living through. In 2025, total U.S. mattress market value fell about 6.5%, but unit shipments fell much harder, down 13.2%. So fewer people are buying, but the ones who do are spending more per purchase. In fact, the average selling price of mattresses made in the US rose nearly 5% last year. This is what people mean by a barbell market, and it should shape your floor plan. Volume is soft, but the customers who walk in are trading up to premium beds and adjustable bases. Speaking of which, adjustable base shipments actually rose year over year, even as traditional stationary foundations fell off a cliff, down more than 20% in value. Shoppers are also moving toward bigger sizes, with queen and king gaining share, while twin and full lose ground. All of it points the same direction. The margin is in the mix, not in the traffic count. The retailers who win here lead with premium sleep systems and adjustable bases, instead of chasing a shrinking pool of entry-level sales. And one quick regional note that hits close to home for many of us. The South is still the largest mattress market in the country, at roughly 42% of dollar sales.
Let's move outside to the outdoor furniture category, where executives say a new worry has climbed near the top of the list, and it's regulation. For years, the concerns were weather, freight, and shaky consumer spending. Now it's a growing web of rules that touches design, sourcing, packaging, and pricing all at once. The one that comes up most is PFAS, sometimes called forever chemicals. One executive, John Pinion IV of Lloyd Flanders, ranks PFAS restrictions as the industry's single biggest operational challenge over the next 3 to 5 years, with tariffs second and packaging laws third. The disruption is real, not theoretical. At Castell, Rory Remmert said taking PFAS out of finishes caused color shifts and forced a lot of extra testing. Not every company was hit hard, though. Telescope Casual's Henry Vandermanden IV said his company got through it with relatively little trouble, and he credited Glen Raven, the parent company of Sunbrella, for removing PFAS treatments while keeping the fabric performing the way it should. But a newer concern is rising fast, and that's packaging rules. Extended producer responsibility laws, often just called EPR, are spreading across states and could make companies more responsible for the packaging they put into the market. Terry Lee Rogers of O.W. Lee said these packaging rules are now her biggest source of uncertainty because the requirements vary by state and keep changing. Some companies are getting ahead of it. George Schwartz at Linen Home Decor said they simply removed PFAS from their products rather than try to track a patchwork of different state laws.
So what does this mean for retailers? Compliance is quietly becoming part of the cost of the product, and eventually that reaches the price tag. Expect more conversations with your outdoor suppliers about reformulated finishes, new packaging, and possible price changes, tied to regulation rather than raw materials. The bigger theme is uncertainty itself. When manufacturers can't get clear answers on what compliance requires, they build in a cushion, and that cushion shows up in cost and in lead times. It's worth asking your outdoor suppliers now how PFAS and EPR are affecting their plans. And I'll add one related note. Not everyone puts chemicals at the top. Luis Ruesga of Zoo Modern said it's tariffs, not chemical rules, that keep his team up at night, because outdoor production is still concentrated in Southeast Asia, and trade policy is completely out of a manufacturer's control. One more piece of news before we wrap, and it's a deal. Serta Simmons Bedding is acquiring a longtime licensee, family-owned Dorme Products. This is Serta Simmons' first acquisition since 2018. Dorme supported Serta customers in Texas and New Mexico, across national accounts, retail, independent dealers, and hospitality. Serta Simmons began producing those orders in Dallas right away, and it's taking over the facility's equipment and raw materials, though not the Dorme factory itself. The purchase price wasn't disclosed. This looks like consolidation aimed at scale and more reliable service, and it signals that Serta Simmons is on offense after a tough stretch for the whole category. If you carry Serta, the near-term thing to watch is simply continuity during the handoff, so it's smart to confirm lead times and order status on any open Texas and New Mexico business. Longer term, a stronger, better capitalized supplier with more domestic capacity is a good thing in a soft market.
Let me leave you with one quick number that ties a lot of this together. June marked a 9th straight month of retail sales gains. You may see a headline saying core retail sales jumped more than 10% year over year, but there's an asterisk on that. The National Retail Federation pointed out that the number looks huge mainly because it's being compared to a weak June last year. On a more apples-to-apples basis, growth was closer to 4%. Furniture and home furnishing stores were up almost 5% year over year, though they did dip slightly from the month before. So the trend is positive, just not quite as dramatic as the headline suggests. That's your briefing for this week. If you found this useful, take a second to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.